It's a good morning. Anytime you can hear Bible pages wrestling, it's a good day to be alive. And this is the day that the Lord has made, and let us be glad and rejoice in it. And yeah, I'm gonna start reading. I'm gonna read Psalm 57 this morning. It's a Psalm of David. It says, when he fled from Saul into the cave. So the setting is David is hanging out in the cave. And he says, have mercy on me, O God. Have mercy on me, for in you my soul takes refuge. I will take refuge in the shadow of your wings until the disaster has passed. Let's stop right there. What is the shadow of your wings? We don't see that here in America or in this day and age very much, if any at all. Shadow of the wings is like a big cloak that the rabbis would wear, and the wings would be the little emblems on the wings, and they would pull it out and cover and give you a hug, and David is just speaking of just resting and hiding out in the shadow of the wings of Jesus. And it's a beautiful place until the disaster has passed. David's life's a mess here, but God is allowing everything he's going through, and he's made up his mind to just say, I'm just going to rest and hang in the shadow of the wings of Jesus. And he cried out to the God Most High. Who's the God Most High? First off, there is a God, and he's the Most High God, and there is no other God besides him. God is not in competition with other gods. He's the only true God. He's the one true God. And it says in verse 2, he says, I cry out to God Most High, to God who fulfills his purpose for me. David is having some really beautiful thoughts here in the cave, and understanding that God's purpose for him is playing out, even though he's in the middle of the mountains, in the middle of a cave. That's the purpose of God for his life. And you don't see any complaining. You see him resting, and you see him understanding the purpose of God is greater than what he would have in mind. And in verse 3, he says, he sends from heaven and saves me. In James it says, every good and perfect gift comes down from above, from the Father of lights, with whom there's no variation or shifting shadow. The direction here is from heaven. He sends from heaven. God sends, physically speaking, God sends rain and snow and sun and bright light for us to enjoy. But in our prayer life, God, everything comes down from above. I think the direction is huge here. When Jesus prays, he looks up. He looks up, and I love that. And how David is sharing he's receiving something, or he wouldn't even be able to say he sends from heaven. That he couldn't say that's true if he wasn't receiving something. He sends from heaven and saves me, rebuking those who hotly pursue me. Selah. These men that were after him, Saul and his men, were hot-tempered and raging and pitchforks and everything. God sends his love and his faithfulness. And God sends his love and his faithfulness. God sends his reassurance, his protection, and David's in a safe spot despite the circumstances that he's faced with, being hunted down. Verse 4 says, I am in the midst of lions. Lions aren't very friendly. And so I think that gives us a very vivid picture. And David always uses the reference of lions as his enemies. And I like that, because he He's had encounters with lions. As a boy, he killed a lion. But I am in the midst of lions. It's not really a safe place to be at. I'm thinking of Daniel in the lion's den. If God hadn't closed the mouths of the lions, Daniel would have been munched up. And but Daniel's life was pure, and his conscience was clear before the Lord, and God rescued him and saved him. And then we know, like, the men that were put in after Daniel, they didn't even reach the ground before the lions got them. So it couldn't have been a hunger on the lions' part. It was a supernatural hand of God moving and closing the mouths of lions and chilling them out, or making Daniel invisible to them, one or the other. I am in the midst of lions. I lie among ravenous beasts, men whose teeth are spears and arrows, whose tongues are sharp as swords, who are sharp swords. I want to share a verse. David is describing men that haven't had a renewed heart, that still have a heart of stone. Anyway, who are living out of their ravenous, lioness, sharp heart, the heart that doesn't possess Jesus. In verse 5, what a switch here. He's seeing all the stuff going around him, and he says, "Be exalted, O God, above the heavens. Let your glory be over all the earth." That's David's eyes are shifting here, and he's worshiping God, and he's clearly doing that. Verse 6, he says, "They spread a net for my feet. I was bowed down in distress." David is bowing down to Jesus, the maker of his life, and seeking refuge and help and crying out. And I think David is a wonderful example for us who go through distresses and problems and pains and trials. Verse 6 is, "They dug a pit in my path, but they have fallen into it themselves, Selah. My heart is steadfast, O God, my heart is steadfast. I will sing and make music." How beautiful. David's surrounded by ravenous wolves, hunted down by Saul and his men. He's literally being hunted down. And his heart is steadfast. His heart is not shaky. His heart is, and he's singing and making music. There's something going on in this man's life, in David's life, that's a lot different than what we would expect or see. And clearly it's God. He has God in his life. "Awake, my soul, awake, harp and lyre. I will awaken the dawn." So he's waking up early in the morning and trying to get his soul to wake up and thrive and be alive and full of life and energy. And sometimes that's a big struggle. And David is just telling and directing his soul, his mind, his will, and his emotions, is directing it and saying, "Hey, get it together. Direct. This is wake up. The dawn is coming. The sun is coming. Wake up." In verse 9, it goes on. He says, "I will praise you, O Lord, among the nations. I will sing of you among the peoples." David is just praising the Lord and singing of the Lord in the middle of the congregation, in the middle of people. He doesn't really care what people think. And I read something the other day that it was a great reminder that Jesus, he was, and he is not bondaged and tied down to what people think of him. He really doesn't care. He goes to dinner parties and who walks in and he doesn't wash his ceremonial washing hands like everyone's done for ritual years, and he goes in and he just sits down, plops down, starts eating, and the master of the banquet and the Pharisees, they go and they're like, "What's up? You didn't wash your hands." And he goes, "You're full of evil." Like, that's Jesus. He really was not concerned to get invited back. He's not bound with these chains of, an emotional pleas of, like fear of man and what people think of him. And I just love that about my Jesus. I love that about him. I love that he can just enter into any scene, any situation, and he really is not tied down. He is totally 100% free. He lived the sinless life. Um, and I just love that, how he is freedom. And I'm reminded of the verse, it was for freedom that Christ Jesus set you free. Galatians 5. It was for freedom that Christ set you free. And we're to walk in freedom, and one of those areas of freedom is fearing God, not man. And Jesus was perfect at it. He really didn't care what people thought of him. And verse 10, he says, "For great is your love, reaching to the heavens. Your faithfulness reaches to the skies." Verse 10, "For great is your love, reaching to the heavens." It's like the air in the atmosphere. There's no place that God's love doesn't exist, or doesn't reach. Your faithfulness reaches to the skies. Be exalted, O God, above the heavens. Let your glory be over all the earth. There's this, he prays that continually. Be exalted, O God, above the heavens. Let your glory be over all the earth. We see a pattern. He says it a couple times there in the psalm. So here's Psalm 57. I hope you enjoy, and you're blessed.